Right, welcome to today's tutorial. So in this tutorial, we'll be discussing linear functions and quadratic functions. So in case you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask your question. Okay, so the first question in this tutorial sheet was asking us to find or to determine the slope. So the question is determine the slope intercept form of the equation of the line between each of the following pairs of points. Okay, so this question is asking us to determine the slope. So determining the slope is straightforward. I'll actually even show you how to find the equation of the line using the same slope from this same question, so that when we meet other questions in front, it will not be difficult for us to solve them. Okay, so I said after this tutorial, we're going to go back to the tutorial for functions. Yeah. And then we'll also have to look at other tutorials. Okay. So the gradient or the slope is simply given by the formula m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if you've been given 2 points, x1 and x1, y1, and x2, y2, you can use this one, or you can also use it in this way. You can say y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So what you should just make sure is that if you start with y2 on top, even x2 should start as a denominator. If you start with y1 on top, even x1 should start as a denominator there. So that's the most important part which you need to know when finding the gradient. And then the equation of the line is given by y minus y1 is equal to m x m and then x minus x1, because we know to say the equation of every straight line is always in the form y is equal to mx plus or minus c. So I'll just put plus there, because when c is negative, the sign of c is the one that determines the sign that is going to be here. Okay, so let's take first the first points. So these 2 points, I'm going to find the gradient, and I'll also find the line using this formula. Okay, so I'll find also the equation of the line. So the gradient m is simply just going to be given by, okay, let me write down these 2 points. We have 4, negative 5. So this one will be my x1 and this one will be my y1. Then we also have 2, 3. This one will be my x2, this will be my y2. So I'm going to say m is equal to, I'll get my y2, which is just here. So in this case, I'm going to get 3. I'll put it there and I'll say minus y1 is simply just negative 5. We have y1 there, which is just negative 5. So I'll open brackets and then I'll put negative 5 there. Then say everything over. My x2 is 2. Then we say 2 minus x1 is simply just 4. So I'll put 4 there. So the gradient will therefore be equal to, when you subtract on top there 3, I'll write my 3 there, and then negative times negative, I'll get a positive. Then I'll have a 5, everything divided by 2 minus 4. The answer is negative 2. So 3 plus 5, this will give me, so the gradient will be equal to 3 plus 5, this is going to give me 8. Then everything divided by negative 2. So 8 divided by negative 2, the answer is simply just negative 4. Yeah, so this is how you find the gradient. Do we have any questions on how to find the gradient?
No.
All right, so okay, let's move on to the line. So if you're finding the line, you simply just have to get any of these 2 points. So we've been given 2 points. They're saying these 2 pairs of points are on the same line. So to find the line, you just get any of these 2 points and plug it where there is y1 and x1. So if you get x2 and y2, make sure that there you put your x2. There you put your y2, and then you put your x2 there. And then the gradient, you use the same gradient that you found using these 2 points. So in this case, we're going to say y minus. So I'll get any of these 2 coordinates. So if I get this group of coordinates, I'll make sure that where there is y1, I'll put 3. Where there is x1, I'll put 2. If I get this, this set of coordinates, this one, I should make sure that where there is y1, I'll put -5, and then where there is x1, I'll put 4. So where there is y1, in this case, let me get this one. So my y1 is simply just -5. So I'll put my -5 there. And then I'll say this is equal to, the gradient is simply just -4 anyway. I'll replace it. Let me just write it like this. Well, let me replace it in advance. Okay. Okay, so I was saying my gradient that I found was -4. So I'll put -4 there. Then the value of x, I'm going to put it where there's x1. So since I got this set of coordinates, means that my x1 is going to be 4. So this will now be equal to y. Negative times negative will be +5. Then -4 times x will be -4x. And then say -4 times -4, the answer will simply just be +16. So this is straightforward. I'm just going to say you simplify this equation. So this will be y is equal to, so I'll just take this 5 to the other side of the equal sign. And this will now be equal to -4x, then plus 16. Then this will be -5 this side. So the value of y will therefore be equal to -4x, then 16 minus 5, the answer is just 11. So this will be +11. So this is the equation of the straight line. So in case you've been asked to find the equation, this is what you're supposed to find. Okay, so do you have any questions on how to find the equation? I want to see if we can solve another question or we proceed to the next question.
So the question says, can we use either the one which is y equals to mx plus c or y minus y1?
Okay, in this case, the best equation to use is this one, y minus y1, mx minus x1. The reason is simple, because you do not know the value of c. Yes, I think that's the best way I can explain this, because the value of c is normally, let's say if you have the xy plane like this, then you have a line which is maybe, let's say it's passing like this. The value of c is always the point at which this line cuts the y-axis. So if maybe, for instance, this line cuts the y-axis at 2, this is the value of c that you take. That's the value that you put there. So in case maybe between these 2 points, there's one point which is, let's say maybe if we had a point between these 2 points, if we had a point which was something like 0, something, let's say 0.5. If we had a point which was like this, yes, we can use this equation, because we just pick 5 as the y-intercept, because we know to say at 5, that's where the line will cut the y-axis. Yeah, so in this case, if you have a point which is 0.2, you can just get 2 and replace it where there is c. So you have to use this equation.
All right, so it's clear.
Okay. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we have these equations. I mean, we have these questions which are also very simple. The first one is give the equation of the horizontal line passing through the point -6, 11. So this is a straightforward question. They are saying we give the equation of a horizontal line. So you need to know what an horizontal line is. And you need to know what a horizontal line is and what a vertical line is, because sometimes you might be asked to give the equation of a vertical line, which is actually the third question here. Yeah, so when you talk about a vertical line is simply a line which is in this form. Then horizontal is the one that is this. So that is like this. So both lines, this one and this one, have the gradients which are equal to 0. So the gradient of this line and the gradient of this line are simply just 0. So if they talk about the horizontal line, you just have to know to say m is equal to 0. You talk about the vertical line, you know also to say m is equal to 0 as well. Okay. So in this question, we've been given x1 and y1. So we have -6, 11. So my x1 will be this one, y1 will be this one. The equation of a straight line is given by y is equal to mx plus c. So you can either use this one if at all you know that it's cutting the y-axis at some point, and you also know the value of c, or you use y minus y1 is equal to mx minus x1. So when we get these coordinates and plug them there, we are going to say y minus the value of y1 is simply just equal to 11. Then we have the gradient, which we said is equal to 0. So the gradient is 0. We're going to put 0 there. Then we open brackets. We have x minus the value of x1, simply just -6. Okay. So we have y is equal to, so we say y minus 11 is equal to 0 times everything in the brackets this side. We're going to get a 0. So just take this -11 to the other side. So this will be y is equal to 11. So this is the line you're looking for. Same applies to this one. You do the same thing. You just have x1 there and y1. Then you just plug them in this same equation. So when you put your x1 and your y1 there, so you're going to have something like this. Yes, Margaret, you have a question?
Yes, sorry, I'm going to take you back a bit. You said when m is 0, what should make you know that m is 0?
I can't get you. What's your question again?
I'm asking when you say that m is 0, which is the gradient on this what lines, like what makes you to know to say m is equal to 0?
All right, so what made me to know that the gradient is equal to 0 is, I think you just have to know that every straight line has a gradient which is equal to 0. Yeah, you understand this better when you when you do calculus. That's when you understand it better. Because if the gradient is equal to 1, the line should be like this. Should be like this. If you're sketching the graph, it's going to come out like this, meaning you have something like, if let's say the value of x is 1 at that point, the value of the value of y should definitely also be 1. If the value of x is equal to 2, the value of y should definitely also be equal to 2. What this means is that the equation will simply just be y is equal to x. So if you have the gradient which is equal to 1, you have a line which is going to come out like this. Yeah, so if the gradient is equal to 1, and then if you have, let's say, y is equal to x plus 1, if you have something like this side, means that this line will just be shifted on the right. Yeah, to just be shifted on the right by 1 unit. That's what it means. But otherwise, what you should just understand is that every straight, every horizontal and vertical line has the gradient which is equal to 0. Same applies to a curve at its turning point. At this point of the curve, the gradient is always equal to 0, because the line is neither increasing or decreasing in gradient, but it's a straight line at that point. So that's what you should know. The horizontal line has the gradient equal to 0. Yes. Yeah, so some applies to this one. You just have to plug in your values of y1 and x1 there. You also put your gradient there, which is 0. Okay. Give the equation of the x-axis. So the equation of the x-axis, you have the x or y plane. It's like this. Yeah, so you have the x or y plane there. And then if they ask you to give the equation of the x-axis, you know that in the x-axis, the value of y is equal to what? It's equal to 0. So that's why here they're not asking us to solve or to find any equation. They're saying give. So you just have to know. Okay, I don't know how I can explain this, but the best thing is just for you to know to say, in the x-axis, the value of y is equal to 0. This is the equation of the x-axis. And then in the y-axis, the value of x is equal to 0. This is the equation of the the y-axis rather. So for the second question, this one, the equation is this one, and then for question 4, the equation is this one. Yeah, so these are some of the basics you have to know about linear equations. You just have to know to say in the x-axis, the value of y is equal to 0. Then in the y-axis, the value of x is equal to 0. These are two important equations that you need to know. Yeah, they are very helpful and very important. You are going to apply them on a lot of questions. Okay. So we have also this question here, which says, give the equation of the line passing through the point 1, -5, that is parallel to y is equal to 12 minus 8x. So this is also a very simple question. And it's also a very simple question. The first thing that you need to find is the gradient. Remember, the equation of a straight line is y is equal to, y minus y1 is equal to mx minus x1. So the most important thing that we need is the gradient, because we've been given the value of x1 and y1. So what is just remaining for us to find in order to find the equation is just the gradient. So how do we find this gradient? We know to say this line that we are trying to find is parallel to this one. So when you have two parallel lines are, they look like these two here. So if you have two lines which are parallel, you need to understand to say they have the same gradient. So any lines that are parallel are all, they all have the same gradient. So if we have, let's say, line A, which is like this, is parallel to line B, which is also like this. These two lines are said to be parallel only if they have the same gradient. Yeah. So if they tell us that the line that we're finding here is parallel to this line here, it means that the gradient of this line is the gradient that we're supposed to put here. That's what that means. Okay, so how do we determine the gradient of this line? So the gradient of this line is always the coefficient of x. When you check this equation, the coefficient of x here is the one that we're calling the gradient. So we just simplify this equation and write it in the form y is equal to mx plus c. So when you write it in this form, the coefficient of x is the one that we're going to get as the gradient. So we have y minus, the value of y1 is simply just -5. We put -5 there. Then we say this is equal to m. Let's get our m from this equation. So the equation is y is equal to 12 minus 8x. So I'm going to write it in this format. So this will be y is equal to -8x plus 12. So the coefficient of x is the one that we're calling the gradient. And we know to say these two lines are parallel, hence they have the same gradient. So in this case, the gradient is simply just equal to -8. So this -8 is the one that we're going to get as our gradient, even for this equation that we're finding. So we'll put -8 where there's gradient, and we open the brackets, we say x minus, the value of x1 there is simply just 1. So we have 1, negative times -5 there, we'll get +5. Then we say this is equal to -8 times x, this is -8x, -8 plus 1, the answer will simply just be 8. Then we have y plus 5 is equal to -8x plus 8. So we take this 5 to the other side of the equal sign. We're going to have y is equal to -8x plus 8, then -5. So we say y is equal to -8x, then 8 minus 5, the answer is simply just 8 minus 5, the answer is simply just +3. So this is the equation they are looking for. So this is the equation which is parallel to this equation that we've been given. Do we have any questions here?
Sorry,
Hello?
If you can go, yes, if you can just go back where you, starting from the y is equals to 12 minus 8x, we've arrived to a -8. And then down that again.
Okay. You mean starting from this point? Okay, so from this equation that we've been given here, we're just getting the gradient, because they are saying the line that we're supposed to find here is parallel to this line. And then we said if two lines are parallel, they have the same gradient. So from this equation, which is y is equal to 12 minus 8x, we're just getting the gradient, which is the coefficient of x. So I just rearranged this equation into this format here, and then came up with this equation here. So from this equation, I concluded that my gradient, which is the value of m here, is simply just -8. I just got the coefficient of x, and then I replaced it in this equation, the equation that, the general equation of a straight line. So while there is y1, I replaced -5, which is there. Then while there's the gradient, I put -8. And then while there's x1, I put 1. Then multiplied through by -8 to get -8x plus 8. Then after multiplying, I just took this 5 to the other side of the equal sign to get this equation here. Then subtracted 8 and 5 to get +3. So this is the equation we have. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I think it's similar to this one. Okay, this one here. Let me just, so from solving question 8, let me just do this. Okay, so question 7 is also similar to question 8. So question 7 is also similar to question 6 rather. So the question is, give the equation of a line passing through the point. So this is the point that we've been given, and it is parallel to this line here. So remember what I said, the equation of a straight line, the general form of the equation of a straight line is simply just y minus y1 is equal to m. Then we have x minus x1. So this is the general form of the equation. Then from this equation that we've been given, we're just going to get the gradient because they are saying the two lines are parallel. The line that we're going to find and this line that we've been given, they are parallel. So we just have to get the gradient from this line that we've been given. And how do we get the gradient from there? We rearrange this equation into the format y is equal to mx plus c. So I have this equation, which is y is equal to 9 minus 3 over x. And then 3 over x, I think, multiplied by x. I think there was an error here. Yeah, because this can't be like this. This means that this x and that x will cancel. I think that was a problem on this question. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's talk about perpendicular lines. Yeah, so I think these are the questions that to solve for today. And then tomorrow we'll continue with quadratic. I don't know if there are also other equations that we need to look at, but tomorrow we'll continue with other equations and also look at quadratic equations. So I want everyone to come and attend tomorrow's lesson, because quadratic equations best understood on the introduction. So if you miss out the introduction, you will find it very difficult to understand what we're going to be discussing, yeah, after tomorrow in short. Okay, so let's look at perpendicular lines. So for parallel lines, we said the gradient is always the same. So when you say two lines are parallel, the gradient m1, if this is m1 and this is m2, so we say m1 is equal to m2 for two parallel lines. So when you say two lines are perpendicular, it means that these two lines, they meet at 90 degrees. So these two lines, they meet at 90 degrees. You have two lines which will be in this format. We have the first one, which is like this. And the second one is like this. So M1 and M2, we have these two lines. We have line 1 and line 2. So line 1 and line 2 meet at 90 degrees. So what this means is that when you multiply their gradients, M1 and M2, the answer that you are supposed to get always is a -1. So if they say these two lines are perpendicular, means that when you find the gradient of this line and the gradient of this line passing through this point, when you multiply the two, the answer should be -1. So let us find the gradient of this line first. So this line is already arranged in this format. So we know to say it's always supposed to be in the format mx plus c, which is, when I write this line, it's just going to be y is equal to 2/5 x plus 1. Yeah, so in this case, if you compare this equation and this equation, you discover that the gradient there, m, is simply just 2/5. So remember we said if two lines are perpendicular, m1 times m2 should give us -1. So if this is my m1, to find my m2, which I'm going to use to find the equation of the line perpendicular to this line, I'm going to use this equation here. So while there's m1 there, I'll put 2/5, then I'll put m2 is equal to -1. So the value of m2 is simply just, when you cross multiply there, we're going to get -5/2 as the second gradient. So if this is the second gradient, you need now to use the general form of the equation of a straight line to find the equation. So you're going to have something like this: y minus y1 is equal to m, then we have open brackets x minus x1. And then while there is y1, I'm going to get the value of y in this given point, which is just 3. And then we say this is equal to, while there is m, which is the gradient in this case, I'm going to get -5/2. And then open brackets, I have x minus the value of x1, I'm getting 10. So it's just a matter of simplifying this equation and finding the final equation. So when you do the simplification here, we'll have something like this. Okay, we are in the last 1 minute. So in case the link cuts, you should join using the same link. We just finish up the 2 questions that are remaining. Okay. So this, when we simplify it, it's just going to be y is equal to, when you multiply this -5/2 times x, we get -5/2x, and then -5/2 times -10, we'll get something like +25. Then when I take this -3 to the other side of the equal sign, I'm going to get +3 this side. So the final answer will simply just be y, -5/2x, then +28. So this is the equation of the straight line that I wanted, which is